Welcome back to the Cheerful Sound Man podcast, where we discuss the world of tech, audio, lighting, video, staging, and all the fun ins and outs that come along with it. We are discussing some more questions today. Today's first question is the top 5 most common tech failures that we experience or deal with and how to deal with them. So the most common tech failures. The first one, if you've ever worked in this industry at all, you know the first one is bad cables, basically. So a lot of times that manifests in audio, but it really all departments do it. So dropouts in audio, or mic not working, or lights not being controlled anymore, those type of things, being bad cables. Or sometimes not even a bad cable, just not a good connection somewhere. And if you ever look at a stage, you'll see even a clean stage with nicely taped lines of cords and all that. There can be hundreds or even thousands of cables on any particular event. And those all just came out of a trunk from the warehouse, into a trunk, into a truck, out of a truck, unloaded, handled by stagehands. So it's quite a journey just to get built and up in the first place. So lots of points of failure there. Again, hundreds or sometimes even thousands of points of failure. So that's our number one thing that we check typically when something stops working. It was working, now it stopped. I lost that speaker, it's not making noise. I had it recently on an event where I had some powered speakers. It's a pretty basic event, a little outdoor worship thing for about 800 people. Things are rocking. All of a sudden, I'm having to push the PA real loud. I'm going, what's happening? It got really quiet all of a sudden. I still hear full range. But then as I moved around, I left front of house and I noticed, oh, my left speaker's out. So I went, and the XLR, it was a powered speaker, had wiggled itself loose. So it's such a simple little thing, shoved it back in, it was good to go. With that one, the strain relief button had broken. We've since fixed that. And we also do things like you can run the cable through the handle to take a little strain off, or tape it or tie line it, some things like that. So those are best practices on how to avoid that or how to help that in the future. But yeah, cable failures are a big one. Another big one, kind of in the same realm as dropouts and audio dropping out, would be wireless interference. So this is becoming more and more common as everybody from T-Mobile to whoever has purchased up big chunks of the wireless spectrum. So what this has done is it's really limited the frequency range that we can operate in for our wireless mics. And on top of that, everybody's gone from stage monitor, not everybody, but most have gone from stage monitors, speakers on the floor, to in-ear monitors, which are also wireless. So that's yet another thing in the radio waves. So it can become quite challenging to find enough open frequencies and enough spots to park your microphones. And then everything can be good all day and fantastic. This St. Pete Vinoy Park is famous for this. Everything's fantastic, and then all of a sudden something else gets turned on somewhere, and all the work and 2 days of festival that all went great all of a sudden gets scrambled and messed up. And the way wireless mics work is they actually are required to be the first thing to receive interference. So they can't actually emit or put interference into other devices. And the reason for that is for air traffic control and police communications and first responders and all those, that basically our mics don't hop onto their frequency and overtake them. So our mics actually are the first to get shut down. So sometimes that can be at a festival when all of a sudden, 40 EMTs and police officers showed up and all their communications equipment is now bouncing around as well. The way we prevent that is we do our best to use Wireless Workbench and other software solutions to, we'll do a frequency scan of an area, which shows us the interference, the different frequency blocks to avoid, the TV channels in that area, the digital channels that are in our frequency range, all that. And then, so that's the proactive way. And then we use the same solutions when, if we're in the heat of the moment and we're seeing failures, as well as we like to have a backup. So another frequency and another mic that's patched and ready to go that we can just hand to the performer. If it's, especially if it's, a big performer or like a rapper or a singer or somebody that's running around the stage and can't be stuck in a microphone. So we like to have a backup that's ready to go. And then also whenever possible, we like to have a hardwired backup. So just an old fashioned traditional wired microphone. And especially again, in some of those more, we mostly have been able to work around it, but like St. Pete is a big one, a market that we work in a lot that has a lot of RF problems. And a couple areas, a couple little patches in Orlando are similar for our markets. A lot of big cities are like that now too, though, so it can be a real challenge. Number 3, and this is kind of goes back to number 1, the cable failure is lights going rogue. So we see this sometimes. We'll have a whole bunch of lights that we have control over. They're all working together, and then all of a sudden there's one light in the corner or one light in the middle of the truss decides it's going to be green instead of red with everything else, or it's going to move down when everything else moves up. Typically, those are one of a couple things. One, again, a bad cable, or it's lost communication because they get DMX cables or data cables, to communicate from fixture to fixture back to the lighting board where they get their control. So a lot of times it's that. Sometimes the fixture itself has just, for whatever reason, being a piece of electronics, needs to be reset, turned off, back on again. Sometimes that can be done remotely, but if you don't have control, sometimes you just got to bring the fixture in and unplug it, plug it back in again. Have you tried turning it off and back on again? That's a common one. But again, that's typically a cable thing. Every once in a while it'll be a power thing. Sometimes it's just the fixture's not happy, needs to be reset. Then one of my least favorites, and probably one of the more common, besides again, like a minor audio dropout, like a mic cable got pulled loose or a guitar cord got yanked out, is video wall interruptions or dropouts. And if you follow music, festivals, industry at all, I'm sure you've been to a festival or seen one or seen somebody post about one where, even some of the biggest, your Coachellas of the world, like big festivals, have had video wall failures, not typically an entire failure, but where it drops out for a little while and you see them troubleshooting it, or, a section of the tiles go out. And part of that, again, goes back to cables. It goes back to the amount of wear and tear that all these items take, even if you maintain them well. But a big video wall, actually not even a big video wall, so a 20-foot by 10-foot, which may seem big depending on what you do, but that's not a mega size video wall. That's like a standard stage. That would be what they'd put up stage to show graphics and things like that. Those are anywhere, if they're double panels, that's 36 panels. If they're single panels, it's 72. So that's 72 points of connection possible on that video wall. And then you send the data to them and they have to all be talking right, and the data has to travel through the whole signal flow of every single LED cabinet to the end to work properly and to show the image properly and not have it be scrambled or have sections missing. And so this is one of those that definitely, between the wear and tear, the weather, the in and out, stagehands yanking on things too hard, all the things that happen, this tends to be, unfortunately, one of the more common failures that we see across the production industry. We've gotten pretty good at troubleshooting them. If you know what you're doing, you can identify pretty quickly, oh, that looks like that row of power is out. So you go and you check your power that's feeding that whole row of panels. Or, oh, it's scrambled there. It might be a mapping issue. So there's, again, a variety of things it could be. Video guys, this is what their nightmares are about on a regular basis. They're gigmares, if you will. And then I would say this actually should probably be number 1. This is by far the biggest one that plagues the entire production industry, is power and power failures. The reason for that is that we require lots of power to do what we're doing, whether it's video walls, lighting, loud audio, all these things. A festival for 1,000 people, even, or a concert for 1,000 people, which is relatively small, can still require 200 amp 3-phase electrical service, which is significantly more than anyone has in their entire house, right? You typically have a 200 amp single phase distribution into a house. So you're talking about more power than it takes to power a normal single family home, even on the smallest of stages is what's required. So with that being said, there's, again, a lot of points of failure, a lot of different things to plug in. Some of this can be tech failure, as far as not thinking through things all the way, or plugging too many things into one outlet, basically, and drawing too much power. Sometimes it can be a failure. A lot of times we're on generators, which tends to be another big point of concern. It's an engine, it's a truck, basically. It's like having a truck idle and run and power everything all day. And so any sort of engine failure, inverter failure, where it actually takes and inverts it into electricity from the turbine in the generator. So there's lots of points of failure on the generator itself, as well as then a ton of cabling. A lot of times runs right through a bunch of traffic and cable ramps and things like that to its final destination. So again, just a lot of points of failure and possibilities for failure, as well as possibilities for user error. The ways we like to deal with this is whenever possible, we like to get a backup generator. So if we have one generator, we try to get two. It's not always possible, either budget or availability, but we do try to push our clients towards that, towards having at least a backup on site, backup option. We label our power is a big one. That's something we push for all of our techs and teach all of our new techs, is take a little white piece of gaff and label the ends of the cable, what, LED wall left, LED wall right, stage power, all those things, so that if you do have a problem and you're in the heat of the moment, and this is the big thing for all these, is setting yourself up so that when you're in the heat of the moment, being able to quickly address and identify and resolve the problem. And a big part of that is labeling and neatness in your cable run. So not having just piles of spaghetti and cable everywhere, which can happen as let's say you're behind in a load in and you're just running to get caught up and get sound check started. But it can be a real detriment later if you have a failure or a problem or something you have to troubleshoot. And now you're having to do twice as much work to backtrack and trace the cable back all the way through the venue and underneath the stage and up and down around. And simple things like actually just taking the extra 5 minutes at load in when you're setting up to label all your cables on the ends, so that, let's say those 3 lights went out, I can quickly go identify which breaker, which one they are, and start working my troubleshooting there. So those are the big things. And so again, to sum it up, the biggest thing is to be as proactive as possible. And a lot of that is just experience, learning, whether it's working for folks like us that have done it for a while, or just trial and error and messing up a bunch of times, as I'm sure we have. Being proactive with those things, labeling, being neat with your cable runs, having spares, especially on cables, any place where you can have spares, practically have spares. Those are all big tips for hopefully avoiding as many of these common tech issues as possible. All right, so now we'll do a little story time with the Cheerful Sound Man for some of our failures. Now, we've been talking about technical failures. I'll give you a recent one. It ended up all working out fine, but more so just funny on this one. But we also, John Pop and myself, the owners of Vivid Sky Productions, we also own a club here in Gainesville, Vivid Music Hall. And we recently had Nightmare, an EDM artist, rather large artist, especially for our club. Great show, full house. We had several great local DJs open the night. But right before we were about to start over in the way, if you don't work electronic music very often, maybe you don't know this, but typically most of these shows, there's not much of a changeover. It's kind of back to back to back. They use the same CDJs, the same DJ rig and setup, but they come and they load their files and do a quick changeover. Sometimes they'll even go back to back where they just jump right on the decks and actually mix out of the other guy's set and into theirs. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but on this particular night, the openers, they all did great. They killed, full house, just completely packed in there. Fantastic production going crazy. We had lights and video wall and everything. And right when the direct support, the last guys basically on before Nightmare came off, there's supposed to be about a 5-minute changeover for Nightmare. They came off and they go, I don't know what happened, man. The mixer it's froze up, but it let us keep playing. So we just kept playing and finished our set. We're like, wait, when did this happen? And apparently 15, 20 minutes prior, it had locked up and it said some weird, it was like firmware mismatch. But again, it had been working all night. So this is just an equipment failure. It's just a weird, fluke thing. But they came off and we're just mind blown. We're like, you didn't wave us down or say anything. You just kept going with it. All right. So then we were in a tough position because we have, the main headliner that everyone paid money to see that is now, this is now between the tickets and the artist and everything else. This is very expensive, upwards well over $50,000, if not more, just in those type of fees, just to put the show on, which was all worth it when we're having a show. But now all of a sudden the show stopped. So as in this case, the production company and the promoter, it's a pretty terrible, terrifying moment when you go, oh crap, do we have a backup on site? And we usually do keep a backup mixer and a backup CDJ on site because CDJs sometimes do have problems. The mixers sometimes do have problems. On this particular night, we had a backup CDJ, but we did not have a backup mixer at the club. So going into panic mode, I went into panic mode. Oh God, what are we doing? Do we have another one at the shop? I'm pulling up our inventory. Thankfully, our shop's only about 10 minutes away. So, okay, we had to delay a little bit, kill some time. Okay, I'm making a plan. Meanwhile, I didn't know that John, my partner, had already taken off down the road to another club just down the street from us that we had some gear at for, it was a local night, local event. And they had another one of the mixers there of ours. And so this is more just from a comical standpoint. And also, I'm sorry, that venue is no longer open. So I can say it now, but he went running into the building. The security's looking at him like, wait, who is this guy? What's happening? And he went, and while the guy was in the middle of his set mixing, John came and unplugged the mixer and pulled it out and said, I'm really sorry, got to take this. See you later. And ran out and did it so fast that the security didn't even know to stop him or know what to do. And had it back all within, it was about 15 minutes total, which we played some house music in the meantime. And ended up being able to start the show. He still was able to do his whole set before last call that night, and it all went great. But the big thing for us was then we were going, okay, never again with not having a backup mixer on site for a show. That was way too close of a call. What if we didn't have one at a club? Or what if that club had an equally big event that night? So we were able to do that and then apologize to them and refund them and things like that. We were able to do that because again, it was a local night. It was they were able to then just plug their computer directly into the sound system instead of through the little DJ mixer. And while I'm sure they weren't happy about it, it wasn't a fun night. Everybody still had a show. So that was just more of a funny one. Some other big failures. We had an LED wall that again was working all day, working flawlessly, working great. And then all of a sudden the headliner goes on and a song in, it just kaput, shuts down. Nothing's working. It's powered fine. It's showing signal fine. It's just not doing stuff. Thankfully, we were able to get that. That was only a couple songs, but that was, when you have something like that going on, I will say it feels, 5 minutes feels like 5 hours because you just feel the pressure of both from the artist as well as the audience members and everybody looking, going like, what's going on? Why? Usually it's worse when it's quiet. So when music cuts out, when audio cuts out is the absolute worst because there's no hiding that. All of a sudden, everybody can hear themselves talk to each other. There's no hiding the fact that something's going on. If you lose a truss of lights for a few minutes while you troubleshoot it, well, again, it's not great. And we try and do everything we can to avoid these types of things. It's not going to stop the show versus if sound goes out, you tend to be kaput. The other one with Nightmare, once we did have him going, he had 2 or 3 different times where the subs were so powerful on stage that it actually rattled his USB stick out. And I'd never seen that before. That was a new one. So it'd actually be in the middle of the song and the big drop would come and then silence. So that was, we ended up with a great show that night and everybody had a good time. And I think Nightmare will come back and see us again sometime. But that was, it was our own personal nightmare that night of things getting interrupted and stopping and starting. Those are some of my vulnerable stories. There's plenty others. I could tell stories all day about various events. Been doing it 20 years and have thankfully don't have a lot of failures, but have had enough in 20 years that there's definitely some to talk about. So.